everybody. We're good to go here. We're good. We're good. Welcome, everybody.
Do you want me to move this out of the way?
And thank you for coming.
I think I'll stop it.
First and foremost, thank you, Kevin Lowe and Inspire Bath, for hosting this awesome event. Really excited about it. And Kohler, of course, that's coming up. Thank you to our annual sponsors, Poke and Pull, Wolfers Lighting, Landry and Arcari, FBN Construction, Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams, California Closets, Audio Video Design, Designer Bath, MWI Fiber Shield, Eric and White, McGeo, New England Home Magazine, Sunbrella, and The Shade Store. And a special thank you to our event sponsor, Elaine Frederick. Elaine is a wonderful supporter of IFDA and our industry. She holds a certificate in both interior design and digital photography from Rhode Island School of Design. In addition, she studied photography for architecture and interior design at New England School of Photography in Boston. Elaine bought her first serious camera during high school and has kept up with the ever-changing technology in photography. Her extensive understanding of digital techniques and her post-processing skills enable her to work with architects and interior designers to produce high-quality images that showcase their work and impress target audiences. With a genuine interest and knowledge of interiors, Elaine can capture full room scenes, document architectural details, or convey a lifestyle. Elaine will be here throughout the event, so please reach out to her to see if she can help with any photography needs. Thank you, Elaine. We also would like to thank Betsy Froelich from Kohler and Kohler for sponsoring the event. Thank you for being here. A couple of real quick upcoming events, IFDA events. The Awards Gala, our annual Awards Gala is being held on Thursday, December 12th at the Boston Design Center with our co-host Modern Luxury. Entry submissions for the gala are due on Friday, November 14th, and we encourage you all to enter your projects. Last year was...
I'm going to jump in for John here really quick. We don't have a lot of submissions at this point, so if you think you want to win an award, you have a good chance. So maybe think about submitting something. It's really good for your career if you're an award-winning designer. It doesn't. No one asks what award you won.
So we've got that, of course, and then the IFDA, in conjunction with that, we have the Holiday Tree Challenge at the Boston Design Center. So same night, which will benefit the Rogerson communities. Trees are due on December 3rd and will be on display at the BDC until December 12th at the gala. And then they'll be judged and award will be given for the best holiday trees. So everybody should also enter not only just their projects, but their trees. And then lastly, we have our winter party, which is always just pretty much our big event of the year. Yeah. And that'll be January 9th this year. So save the date for that, and still working out the details, but lots of info to come. And now I'd like to introduce first the man, the myth, the legend, Bob Ernst. Thank you so much for stepping in on short notice and being our moderator. We're very lucky to have you. And I will give over the mic to Bob Ernst.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you to the IFDA board, board that near and is that on? No. Is it working? Yeah.
Hold it on.
Hello.
You just have to hold it right up to your mouth. Sucks.
You're gonna hear my mustache start. So thank you very much. I'll do the best I can on short notice here. It's a great panel we have together here. Really excited to introduce first and foremost Chris Brown, who I've known for a long time. Chris is a New England native. He's principal of his firm, B Architecture Studios out of Winchester. Chris studied architecture at Notre Dame. He didn't play in the football team. I verified that today. I wanted to know because that'd be really cool. But the next best thing is being an architect. He taught at the Boston Architectural College, which is terrific, and at Wentworth. He spent a decade working around firms in Boston before opening his own in Winchester. Chris brings his knowledge, his capability, his good humor, his great personality, and his design sense to each of his projects. And his firm is in the forefront of innovation locally. Welcome, Chris. And then we're going to vote on who got the highest applause. Betsy Froelich. Betsy is a marketing and brand manager for Kohler and is joining us from the Kohler headquarters in Wisconsin. Betsy has been with Kohler for over 7 years and has her finger on the pulse for the innovation and how Kohler is bringing new ideas to the market.
To be fair, I wrote these bios and I learned right before this started that it's actually 11 years for Betsy. So let's give her a much Bob had the wrong information. You just need to project that.
Thank you. From the diaphragm, right? But I do want to say, I've been out to Kohler a couple times to the plant, and they really are. It's a very interesting combination of you walk in and you see people in full-length aprons with just a pair of gym shorts on, throwing powdered enamel at glowing cast iron tubs to create what we're all installing. And then you go to, around the corner, and they're working with the newest technology and the, cutting edge stuff that nobody's worked. So it's a really cool place to go if you ever get the opportunity, I must say.
Thank you.
So Jessica Chabot, thank you for filling in here on the panel for us. Jess is the Vice President of Business Development and Design for Hawthorn Builders. She has over 20 years in the construction industry and is an award-winning kitchen designer. I didn't know that. That's cool. She won the Jessica Chabot Memorial. She manages the in-house design team for Hawthorn and is the creative director behind their interiors work. She is a self-proclaimed nerd, and always pushing their team to be on the cutting edge when it comes to interior design and construction innovation. And I must say, they're killing it in my hood. I live in Needham, and I can't go for a walk around the block with my wife without seeing 2 or 3 times.
It's probably very annoying for Bob.
No, congratulations, you guys are really doing a great
Thank you.
job there, and that's awesome. Hawthorn Builders has really grown substantially this season. I'm sure it's all because of you.
Yeah, all because of me. Nothing to do with the other 15 hours.
So let's get right into it. When most people think of innovation, they think of technology. Chris, how does your firm keep on top of the latest technologies?
Thanks, Bob. Can you guys, okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Speak
you guys
up.
good one.
So, you just have to have the want to, right, for the technology piece. And, I can remember when Julie and I were actually playing this whole gig over 10 years ago. We were going to be a small firm, but we were going to lead the way with the technology in-house. We were going to portray ourselves as a big firm and be able to show our clients, which was most important, virtually everything that they needed with their home. So we start in-house by being able to work with BIM software, building information modeling, making sure that we are virtually showing our clients everything that we can, and it also shows us everything as we're working through a design. Still can hear me okay?
Mhm.
Perfect. Next, that then attracts a certain person and staff, and our staff are just wonderful folks that they want that bit of technology. So they will, on their own, sometimes a little inspiration or push from me, make sure that there is a product that the latest and greatest we at least understand. So when our clients, because sometimes our clients will know about a product as soon as we do, and maybe even before. And we just have to be ready for that. And we also have to be educated enough to sometimes say no, it's not tried and true yet, or say yes, but there might be something even better. And then we really kind of earn that value for them. So it's a mindset in terms of keeping that technology both from what we're using every day with our software, and that then translates to what we're designing, how we're presenting that design, and then eventually how we're welcoming folks home to what they can use in the house.
Yeah, it strikes me that your job as an architect, where it used to be people would come to you with a problem and you would go and find a solution. A lot of times people are coming to you with a solution that they probably, oh, I heard about this, or I saw this on the web, and can we use it? And your job now is to figure out, I don't know if that's appropriate or not, right?
I think it's really appropriate because we want that educated client. Case in point, we're coming back from vacation. Of course, I'm checking my emails. I can't get away. That's a good thing for me anyway, in my head. But I get an email from a client, and he just was on NPR and learning all about the composite countertop materials and lack possibly of OSHA regulations. And he was very adamant in saying, if we're going to do some type of composite countertop for our kitchen, I don't want it to be a detriment to those cutting it and installing it. They don't want to inhale the dust. They want to make sure that they're safe. And I thought, I welcome that. Obviously, I'm outside the country. I hadn't even heard of that article, and most of our fabricators are pretty good, but there are those outliers that we need to either educate and ramp up, or just find the best ones for them.
Very true. So you've got both the innovation on the front end of how do you present your projects, and then also the innovation of having to integrate all those products in. Terrific. Jess, can you give us some examples of what you are seeing in what you guys are doing from the technology perspective?
Yeah, so we see, I have twofold. So we're a builder, and then we also are specifying finishes. So from the builder standpoint, there's things like you're always trying to get out in front of it, like the way you actually construct a building, whether you're using, sorry, because I don't actually build the building, so I'm speaking to the people who do, but whether it's glue wrap or how the windows are insulated and that sort of stuff, which the guys on our team can speak more eloquently about. But for us as a design team, we're looking at more like, okay, is there a better solution for how something looks? And so the best example I have from that recently is we're investigating a new outlet that basically sits flush with the blue board or flush with the trim molding, the baseboard molding if you have outlets in the baseboard. And that seems like really, oh yeah, that's really cool and no big deal, but when you drill down into how you actually install that, it's actually way more complicated than it just seems when you're looking at the pretty picture. So it's not something you can just hand to an electrician and say, hey, yeah, we want these outlets, go for it. No, so you have to educate them because maybe they've never seen them before either. Like you have a lot of trades who are, doing their job, and maybe they've never seen something that's new and innovative before, and so they need to be educated on how to do it properly, and it becomes a collaboration between the architect and the builder and the design team and then the trade. So now you have 4 people who are trying to work together to actually execute something that on the surface isn't that much more expensive than a Decora outlet. It's maybe $50 more an outlet, maybe $100, so not that big a deal. But we're talking about a lot more time. You have to convince an electrician that they need to do something different than what they've been doing for 15, 20, 35, 50 years. Okay, hey, Mike, by the way, you've been doing it this way for a long time, but now I want you to do it this way. You have to work around that and get them on board, and some of that can be challenging, but really part of the deal. I'm sure, Betsy, you run into this.
It's interesting you mentioned that. We see that in the plumbing industry often, especially as we consider the products that we consider smart home, and where you start to integrate technology into those products, and you run into a really weird scenario where you have plumbers who want to do a very specific thing, electricians who want to do a very specific thing, and no one who wants to do the low voltage things that might take, except someone back there maybe.
We do.
But it's interesting, we've been having a lot of conversations lately about how to connect some of the various trade groups, or how to help educate, what information can we provide, how can people start to incorporate that into their book of business, and it has the opportunity to open up a substantial amount of business for a lot of different individuals.
Great, thank you, Justin, thank you, Betsy. Betsy, this is kind of a open-ended question, but what is Kohler working on? You got anything in
What
there?
are we working on? The answer to that.
Yeah, what's from your point of view? Like, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, I'm actually most excited about what's happening in the smart home area right now. And we approach smart home in a couple of different ways. And it's an area that we are learning a lot about, and we are working with a lot of really great companies and partners on that, because one thing I think that's a good step for us, we have learned that we can't do everything ourselves, especially with smart home. We have to be working with the right partners from a privacy, data security, all of that standpoint. So we approach smart home from the perspective that we can't add technology to products for technology's sake. Nobody wants that, except for maybe 5 people in the country, and we want to make sure that the products that we are adding technology to actually have a benefit for the consumers that are putting them in. They should make people's lives easier, healthier, safer, more delightful. Whatever that reason is, there has to be value for it. And right now we're approaching products from 2 different perspectives. Products that can integrate into some of the really interesting home automation systems that are out there, as well as products that anyone can have just by going and installing a kitchen faucet that has touchless technology with it. There's a lot of opportunity to, I think, have a really strong impact on people's lives with smart home.
That's terrific. Yeah, it's a very precarious route we are, because again, it's so easy to want to put something out there that's going to be the latest, greatest thing and get people excited, but then you got to follow through and actually hit out of the park with it. Otherwise,
which is the tougher thing to do.
Right.
And it's actually interesting though. We've been talking a lot lately. Just one more add-on to that about how that's part of our heritage, and we need to embrace and accept that. We were founded back in 1873, and actually our founder, we made farm implements, and he one day took a hog scalder and put enamel powder on it and made the first bathtub. That's how we got into the bathing business. So it wasn't because we sold a lot of plumbing products before that. So
it was a hog feeder.
Yeah, it was a hog feeder. And if you're curious, it sold for 1 cow and 14 chickens.
Because people in New England don't know whatever you called it before that. The
hog scalder. Okay, yes, hog feeder. So it's part of our heritage, and we need to make sure we're embracing it.
Sure. I know I was out at Kohler, and I think about 8 months ago, and I saw the innovation of in the toilet room with you got some great fake poop and stuff.
Sure do.
Watching the innovation of how they're designing the toilets to work, and they've got synthetic poop that they drop in and they time how long it takes.
Things you never think you would want to talk about until you work for a plumbing company.
I have some videos.
I will tell you, those guys are passionate
Oh.
about what they do.
And I love them. They're the big, it's like if you cooked up like weird science and then
100%.
made them design toilets, they're like into the physics of toilets. It's
There's so much
it's great.
science that has to go into
Yes,
it.
it's shocking.
Yeah, it's like they have races from one toilet to the other.
Doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, like they have all kinds of rules. We won't get into it. We'll move on.
Yeah. I have a video on my phone I can show you if you really want to know. Julie.
No, you don't like that noise
Kohler
when
right
you.
there.
It worked perfect all the time.
I feel like I missed out.
Great.
Must be
Thank
good.
you guys. So smart homes, to go on what you were saying, they're, the smart homes, right? What does that mean? There's such a big picture. Chris, how does your firm educate your clients about the options and, when to, hey, to take it down a notch?
Make a stupid one.
Or let's go crazy, man. Let's go.
For us, it's a series of questions, and hopefully, if we're doing our job right, we're asking them early on, so that we're understanding their goals of, I'm trying to think of, a couple of examples. We do a lot of second homes, coastal homes, so right off the bat, wherever this family is coming from, they want to be able to have it comfortable by the time they get to where their second home is. So that's the easy smart home piece. I mean, something as simple as a Nest can do that. Obviously, there's more intricate ways you could do it, but on your phone, you can actually say, okay, I want 70 degrees once I arrive. That could be in any season. So that's a big deal. And sometimes we're a little surprised that they hadn't thought of that yet. So we're glad we asked. Next is how much control do they want? And so the heating one, that's a really kind of an easy first step because people are really familiar with Nest, and that becomes then the gateway of how much more do you want? The audiovisual piece is another gateway of like, are we thinking Sonos or do you want something more robust? When you leave, you want to be able to turn the whole home off. Another great benefit. And then we're going to get into other smart features because I just said a bunch of buzzwords, and the other buzzwords are going to start to become about the environment and being green. So are we thinking solar panels? Are we thinking a battery, electric car? Basically, I think every project we have on the boards or in construction with the garage has at least a conduit to power an electric car. And now we're doing one without a garage, and we're still getting a conduit there because they will probably in the future have an electric car. So that's kind of music to my ears, and that innovation is really great. So we want to ask these things early because if we're doing this and they're right about to plaster, as you know, Jess, we are way too late, and we're trying to grab an electrician or a plumber or someone to get some PVC pipe through a wall that probably is spray foamed already. And that's a real bummer. So if we're asking these questions in schematic design, we can also then find the right professionals to become part of our team and solve that, and then also get a real budget on it too. Are we doing a $70,000 smart home, or are we doing a $200,000 smart home? And we can have those real conversations. So early is always best, and it just gives them time also to kind of percolate on like, okay, what are the options? Who should I meet with? And take it from there.
One of the things, a question for you about when you do have that discussion about budget early on with people, do you find that people start off with, oh, I want smart home, I want bells and whistles, I want everything else, and then you start talking about budget, and they're, yeah, no, switch is fine. How many times do you find that budget is sort of making the decision, or is it the technology?
Hopefully we're able to steer them a little bit. Intake as much, ask as many questions as we can, intake as much, and saying, okay, this event that you're thinking of, or this design piece, is going to start to be, six-figure number. And that could say, and they could be, okay, that's what we were planning on, or, oh my God, no, let's get back to 50,000, and maybe it's 70. It's like, okay, that's fine. And so at least we had that conversation, but a lot of times there is, if there's the want to, then we just kind of keep progressing and see where it goes.
I'll also say too, like for those of you specifying things, wiring for stuff is really not that expensive. So even if somebody doesn't want to do something now, if you know that they, like Chris said, might want an electric car, which is really smart, or they might eventually want like, I don't know.
They want an intelligent toilet, and
Yeah,
you need to drop
perfect,
the toilet by
yes. Like pre-wiring for that kind of stuff is really not that big of a deal when the walls are open. So, I mean, an electrician might charge you a couple $100 to run a wire when the wall's open. If the wall's closed and spray foamed, like Chris said, like expect that price to be about 4 times more than what you expected. And then somebody might not want to do it at that point because the cost of the labor is too expensive.
Yeah, running a power outlet behind the toilet has become sort of a standard thing for us, or at least having a wire there for future use.
That's what we're hearing from a lot of people.
So, Jess, how are you when you guys are getting plans, or I don't know, you guys do a lot of your own interior design or a lot of your own design build work.
50-50.
But once somebody in your office then comes to you with, this is what we want to do, how are you guys having that conversation with your buyers, and how are you integrating that into the building process?
Yeah, so we're on the flip side probably of Chris, which is by the time sometimes things get to us, assuming that we weren't working more as a design build, meaning there's an architect and a builder budget. By the time it gets to that point, it's very easy for clients to nix everything that we're talking about when it gets to that point. So I think in general, part of what we do is educate the client on why something is important. So like I said, like, you know, wiring for the outlet behind the toilet or wiring for an electric car, like that stuff isn't that expensive when you're talking about the rough stage of things. When after you're done with the renovation in 5 years, if they have an electric car and they want an electric outlet in their garage, like that becomes a lot more challenging and difficult if it wasn't planned beforehand. And so I think part of the builder's job in conjunction with the architectural team is to educate the client on why they want to spend money on something they can't see beforehand. And then from the interior's perspective, it's helping them make good decisions about, like a good example would be, we get a lot of requests lately for a first floor bedroom and full bath. So I actually think this is like the best thing that's happening with the new generation. All of a sudden everyone's decided that they want their parents to come live with them, which I love. But for a long time that wasn't even a thing. Like nobody asked for that. Now, like in the last like 3 years maybe, that's all of a sudden become a very big thing. You have multi-generational families, or people want the possibility of a future accessible bathroom on the first floor, but they're not really thinking about like what that involves. So how do you plan for that? Like where's it gonna go? Are you gonna pre-wire? Are you gonna plan for this, that, and the other? Like, so part of the innovation in what we do is really educating the client on what they're not thinking about now and why that might be relevant in 5 or 10 years. And how do you execute that and still stay on their budget?
That's a great point. I think, you know, we're talking about innovation and design, and we talk a lot about new technology and everything, but sometimes innovation is really just innovating the way we're thinking about things and innovating what the goal, you know, to address new goals and objectives that our customers might have in their projects. So I think that's a good point, that sometimes just the parents are moving in, now we have to think differently about how we're going to design it and innovate from a thought process.
Just to jump on that, that's a really interesting point that we've actually been talking a lot about from a manufacturer's perspective. The way we keep talking about it is innovation, big and small, in both product and process. And as a company that's been around for a very long time, you can imagine the bureaucratic processes that have cropped up over the years that may or may not present challenges to us and our wonderful customers at various times. And that's been something we've had to spend a lot of time thinking about. So while we talk about smart home, and that's one of the things I'm most excited about, we actually spend a lot of time innovating our processes as well and trying to rethink how we do things to be better partners for those that we work with.
That's a great point. And you know, business doesn't get any easier year after year, so innovating how you're doing things is a big part of this as well. Right? Okay, well, what you do a lot of the market research, presumably, right?
Yes.
For Kohler, and I know Kohler does a ton of that. What's coming up? What do you guys?
So many things from a market research standpoint, and we do research from a few different perspectives. We do it for products that we're developing, so our new product development teams, they're looking 5 to 10 to 20 years out at what's coming, and then we will do specific research around those products and categories. We also do a lot of research around how people are living, and we call it consumer insights, and understanding what those things are that are driving people and the way that we live that we should be thinking about when we're developing our products. Would you like to know one of my favorite tidbits from our consumer insights?
Absolutely.
The human attention span since the year 2000 has gone from 12 seconds to 7 seconds, which, according to research, and again, I'm not quite sure how they measure this, I've asked our director of insights and she's getting back to me, is less than that of a goldfish.
Really?
Yes, it's less than that of a goldfish. But if you think about it, people have the ability to pay attention to things. How many people binge watch Netflix shows on the weekend? I have 3 small kids, so I can't do that. but
Some of them are doing it right now.
That's right.
Blinders just came out.
But so people have the ability to pay attention to things, but they're paying attention to things in a different way than before and in the way that they want to. So from us, from both a marketing and a product development standpoint, we have to think about how people want to receive information, not just how we want to tell it to them, which is it's a big shift for us.
So now you have to do it in 7 seconds instead of
It's really hard, let me tell you.
So a follow-up question.
By Kohler. There we go.
We'll look at Kohler.
I have a question based on your initial statement that you've got some people working on what's coming 5 to 10 years from now. Presumably they've been doing that for a while, the company's been around. How often do you find Kohler puts a lot of effort into what that group of people say is going to be the big thing 5 to 10 years from now that turns out maybe we missed?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We get things wrong. We do. We talk about, failing fast. Sometimes we fail slower than we would like to, but I would say one of the biggest challenges as a manufacturer is trying to figure out how to meet what the insights are going to tell us and have products that are ready at the time people are ready for them. We launched a color back in, I think it was 2011, called Honed White. It was a beautiful matte finish that was available for a little while. It was too early. It was before a lot of the matte colors were prevalent. People weren't really interested in it at the time, and so we discontinued it a few years ago.
Are you bringing it back?
We're working on it. Something like it. And there's some reasons why it wasn't the right finish at the time, but we saw that matte colors were coming. That was going to be a trend, and we hit the market too soon.
Yeah, it seems to me there must be a certain percentage of what you think, well, are we going to try this, but it's prognostication. I mean, how do you know, right?
It is.
I have a question for Betsy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Do you find that that's also the case sometimes too with like the lead time for something that's special? So like my best example is the ombre faucet, which is wicked cool if you have not seen it. It's probably one of the coolest interior plumbing fixtures I've seen in a long time. Very, very different. I love it. But it has a really long lead time. Like you stock it in, I think, one finish, right? Am I accurate? Yeah. But the rest of them are like a long time. So do you find that people are like, yeah, that's really cool, but I'm not gonna wait?
Yes. No.
That just came to me.
No, it's a great question. So I think
I'm going to dock you one question.
One of the other things that I will say is challenging from a manufacturer's perspective is understanding how many people are going to want a thing that you come out with. So similar to the color that I talked about that we were probably a little bit early on, ombre is one of those things that it's a very relevant trend right now. Are people going to want to put it in a faucet? How many people are going to want to put it in a faucet?
What is it? For the uninitiated. I'm like
So ombre is like,
dying to know.
sorry.
Oh, no, it's a beautiful faucet. So it's on, and we can, send out some pictures and make sure that everyone can see it, but it's a faucet that has 2 different finishes, basically. It either starts in a rose gold and ends in a titanium, or vice versa, and there's a nickel option as well. So it's a gradation of finishes.
It's an amazing finish.
It's beautiful.
It started out as a mistake, and then and somebody loved it. They said, let's go with that.
We have had that happen. We have a really great team of craftspeople. Our industrial designers are craftspeople who, and one of the benefits of actually doing a lot of manufacturing in Wisconsin is that our industrial designers go out into our plant and they work with our manufacturing teams and figure out what is going to work and what won't. To answer your question though, what we have found is that it very much depends on the type of project that people are working with and the product that it is as to how long they're willing to wait. As some of you may know, we have had some challenges with supply chain over the past couple of years that we are very much working to correct, and we've overcome some of those, so you'll see some of that. It's true, it did. We had a fire in our foundry.
Well, thank you guys. So Chris, from outside of the interior design specifically, like the new fixtures and finishes and things like that, what from an architectural perspective, what are you noticing, whether it be building materials, layouts, architectural design elements? So what's innovative, new, Cool.
Wow, we can talk about anything. It's funny, I mean, as you start to ask the question, you first think, okay, open concept. And are some people getting away from that? Yes, possibly. Is it a little heartening to hear that they're getting away from that? Yes, a little bit.
I'm sorry, what did you say it was?
Open concept.
Ah, okay,
Right.
thank you.
So, no, that's fine.
No, you're doing great.
And so, you know, there's that bit. I think kitchen design, because we always design our kitchens. And it's interesting that every couple, family has a different way they want to cook in their kitchen. And you can go from something incredibly large to, nope, I want it smaller, but I need this butter pantry over here. And I need this other real food pantry over there. And so I just had this conversation earlier this week on, you know, how this family was going to use their kitchen. Did they need a lot of different counter surfaces? We do a lot with islands. It obviously is very popular. And then you also need to make sure you can get around that island. And you can open the refrigerator door, and at Thanksgiving, your company can still walk by you. So we're thinking about that, and they're not, but that's fine, because that's why they're hiring an architect and going forward that way. So it's, the kitchen piece is really interesting, and we're also seeing, you know, it used to be open kitchen to dining, and we're seeing a lot of, yes, we want to have that connection, but we want to make sure we're open to living. And that's become a really fun aspect for us, because now we're really seeing the intricacies of their family life. That they can all be there. If it's a Sunday afternoon, they can all watch the Patriots. They can be cooking.
Packers.
You just won that game there.
I couldn't help myself.
And one of our architects is a big Green Bay fan, so.
When you're designing, we also, because we've designed 5 kitchens together, we also take into account how short the main chef is.
Oh, that's it.
Oh.
So I'm 5'2", and Chris is 6 feet. So the kitchen is designed for my height, not Chris's height.
And that's part of the fun of why we do any of this. I mean, in terms of innovation, Bob, like you said, it doesn't have to be this technology piece. It has to be life. So we can exaggerate, you know, our 10-inch difference by, we have a client that the wife is maybe a couple inches taller than Julie, and he's got a good foot on me. Design that kitchen, go.
I don't ever want to pull out a step
Motorized.
stool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
and it's,
design our
so
kitchens, so I never actually let a step stool.
we're talking about the shelf height of the wall cabinet, and we may go lower than a typical 18 inches off the counter. I don't know. I mean, I just watch him come into our office, and I was like, wow.
Do you ever do motorized cabinets?
We haven't, but I have seen between the motorized cabinets or countertop that it can raise and lower, and that might be a viable option. It depends on how much he's going to cook, because she's going to do most of it. Not to quantify the woman that's doing all the cooking in the kitchen, but they haven't admitted that to me, so that's
No,
the
but
case.
we measured, like, where do I stand? Where is my knife?
Yeah.
That is exactly how tall the counter is.
I will make clients use cutting boards. And so we had another client who was a phenomenal amateur chef, and we just said, you're gonna have a cutting board. She's like, no, I'm gonna cut on the marble. I'm like, no, you're not. You're gonna slip, you're gonna ruin your knives, and we all know the consequences. So we
Also
just.
marble.
In case you didn't see my side eye.
I didn't, okay. And so we made sure that her height had 1.5 inches counter as well. So, I mean, that's when they actually express that to us and give us that bit of personality, I mean, that's when we're having fun.
So that strikes me, I've been doing this for a long time, obviously. And it strikes me from an innovation point of view as an architect, you haven't been doing quite as long as I have. It used to be almost that clients would come, I think, to the architects and say, design my kitchen, tell me what I need and everything else, and the architect would, all right, I'll let you know when I'm done, and send it to them, and they would present it. I think it's very different now. It's more of a collaborative, all right, the owner wants to be involved, so that's a big innovation in your industry in terms of how do you manage those clients, and how do you, keep them on track so they don't make mistakes? That's gotta be something different.
I totally agree with you, Bob. I think we push that innovation with our own studio, not to kind of dwell on that, but it's really getting after a questionnaire, a conversation, taking them to a showroom, taking them somewhere like here, and say, okay, let's really kind of work with this stuff. Those same folks I met this week, I was like, all right, we need to get and have some fun in a kitchen showroom. And they hadn't heard, I was a little surprised, they hadn't heard of a steam oven. Well, guess what? You're gonna eat something in a steam oven, and then you can decide if you want that or not. You're already talking about at least 2 ovens and speed cooking, so let's introduce that. And so, it's always that listening piece that we, as our studio, pride ourselves on, so that we make sure we didn't forget anything.
Which again, as I say, from being in the business for a while, just that listening piece is an innovation in the architectural process.
Just to add one comment, and I think interesting challenge to all of the people that are in this room, there will be a really interesting, you talked about different generations, I think sort of convergence of what's happening even in schools right now. So we do a lot of work with Virginia Tech and some of the departments, the architecture department that they have there, and they have their students working, and they actually won a global competition on the Home of the Future that was featured at ICFF in New York this past May. And when you walk into that house, it's all prototypes, and they work with a lot of industry manufacturers to provide them with product and to collaborate with their design teams. You walk into the bathroom, everything adjusts to your height. You walk into the kitchen, everything adjusts to your height. You walk in, depending on the time of day it is, that right, they can accommodate everyone. But it's a really interesting thing to see how that will come to life in reality. And what will that progression be like over the next 5, 10, 20 years as theoretical concepts start to make their way into actual practical application.
It's so much easier and less expensive if our shoes just adjusted to the height of
Yeah, exactly.
Just saying.
So
Someone can patent that.
So I have a question for each of you, and we'll go right down the line, start with Jess, I think.
Okay. I'm ready.
Because you got the mic. So, what have you noticed in terms of clients asking for things that are innovative and new, maybe cutting edge, and you're starting to feel kind of like, well, sometimes just because you can do it, it may not be the right thing to do. They're coming up with ways where you don't, you can walk in the room and everything adjusts to your height. Yeah. Or you walk in the room and the lights turn on and they sense your biometrics and know you like the dimmers at this. Well, maybe you could just go to the dimmer and put it where you like to put it, right? So when do you say to a client, look, just because we can do that, and it's going to take a lot of effort to figure out, how to integrate that. When do you put the brakes on and say, guys, let's reel it in?
When they can't pay for it. So pretty much we'll do anything if someone wants to pay for it. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, to be honest, like a lot of the cutting edge technology is a lot more expensive than the conventional way of doing things, and some of that has to do with the labor force right now. So like I mentioned earlier, you have a labor force that has been doing things a certain way. Like, if you've been, designing white kitchens for 20 years and someone wants gray, you're like, what is this gray thing? Now gray is even almost passé. But so it's kind of like that. Like if you get kind of stuck in a rut, then it's hard to pivot. Our company in particular is not structured that way. We're structured more to pivot almost before the client pivots. But with that is pivoting the entire universe that you build in at the same time. Finding vendors who can, meet your expectations and supply products that are innovative, having, subs that are able to do it, having, a whole team, having a client that understands why it's more expensive. Sometimes that's the biggest hurdle, honestly, is explaining to a client why what they want is more expensive. So why are lighting controls for the entire house more expensive? Well, it's more wiring. Now you also have to have, special outlets, and those outlets and switches are X, Y, Z more. Plus you have to then have So people have kind of lost sight of that a little bit. I also think, interestingly enough, we were doing probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago a lot of whole house lighting controls, and then somehow in between where everything was wired, and then sometime between then and now, that kind of technology became much more wireless. So now, instead of having, you know, the special switches at the wall that have all these lighting controls, now it's all an app on your phone that's controlled by the special light bulbs that are associated with the room. And now you have Alexa, who I'm obsessed with, and I wish Alexa could run my whole life, but that's not possible. I can't wait for that. Like, I know everyone else is like so sad that Alexa's listening. I'm like, you can listen all you want, maybe you'll pick up on some stuff.
Give me some tips. Thank you. Thank you, Jess. Chris, go ahead. I should have said this is a bit of a lightning round. I think I'm getting.
Oh, sorry.
No, my fault. I wasn't keeping track. I
Sorry.
wasn't keeping track. I know we interrupted a little bit, so yeah, I got it. Yeah, Larissa's my boss, in case anybody.
You have now 35 seconds.
Okay, good. So the Can 2 is always, for me, this kind of empty design or built thing, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so a lot of that, so let's bring that to a real world example. You have a client, they go to a dinner party, and then they see something in that home, it's like, we have to have this. And they relate that to me. And my first question is why? Because that's that couple, family, person, whoever it is, but the why. And I kind of want them to prove it to me, because we're designing not for your friend, but for you. And that Can 2 might have been the capability of that builder that they happen to have. And usually that's not the folks that are, you know, in this room on this panel, right? So I always see the Can 2 as like, oh, you didn't push it far enough. Or you didn't think about it long enough to where, oh, maybe you could have either done that better, less expensive, or that detail could have just really sung. So we always try to avoid the Can 2. We try to learn really well what the Want to is. And that's really when we can start to design and have our whole team kind of get invested in what it is we're doing for them.
Really, so it's really starting with what is the outcome you're trying to get, and rather than start with, I want this, I was like, well, why do you want it? And then we'll design, maybe that's the best approach, or maybe there's another way to get there.
Sure, and if it isn't from a dinner party they went to, it's from TV. Right. And then they immediately know, I don't watch any of that crap.
Or it popped up on their Facebook feed.
I would say that ours isn't necessarily, you know, talking to consumers about what they want or don't want. It's actually, or where we have to push back. It's with David Kohler.
Yeah.
He thinks that he is just like his dad and is a visionary and wants to push things as far as they can go. And sometimes we have to reel him back and say, 5 years. Then we can talk about that. But right now we have to focus on what is relevant for the customers here and now.
Great, thank you. And if they've got great golf courses out there too, by the way.
Ryder Cup 20 coming in 2020. Our
Cheese castle.
I am so impressed that you know that. Okay, so
Are we going
cheese is
to
the best thing.
Yeah.
Great, all right, terrific. We're gonna wrap this up, so get some questions from the audience if anybody has any. Yes?
For Kohler, what are you guys seeing on the digital valve side? Are you seeing that kind of pick up, and do you think that's the way with the future, or are we still seeing a lot of standard valves?
Great question. We absolutely see digital as the way of the future. It actually is easier to install. It gives you more options, more flexibility. There's still a hurdle that we have to overcome, I think, in adoption of it, but we are continuing to expand our breadth of options. So once you get that digital valve, you can get something that's a very easy DTV, we call it our DTV prompt, that is, you know, very easy to control, great price point, all the way up to our digital DTV Plus showering system, which is we call it the bad daddy of the showers. Perfect. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, we have it on display in the showroom, so I'm just curious to see where you guys see the future leading, if that'll become a lot more popular in the marketplace.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ask me in a few months. We just installed it. I saw one installed
It's gonna be
today
great.
on my job site.
His customer's gonna love it. I will say the thing that we're seeing with digital, and one of the things that will start, you'll see in the next few months from us, is one of the controls that has a little bit more of a tactile element to control. So some people don't quite want that touch screen on the side as the control. So we have what we're calling mode that will be coming out in the next couple of months that it has a little click that goes with it. You turn it so there's some sort of physical gratification that comes with it, but it's still controlled by the digital valve.
How about any other questions?
Over here.
Yeah, Kim?
Hey, so with the shortage of the labor shortage, are you finding that the trades are keeping up with technology, or are you able to keep the
Was
electricians,
that
the
directed
plumbers?
anybody in particular, or?
No. But are the
I'll answer
plumbers,
that.
electricians
I think
actually
I'm
keeping up
okay
with the technology? Huh?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely an issue, most of the subcontractors are having the same problems that all of us are having, right, is finding enough help and getting people in.
But are they going to school? Are they learning? Are they keeping up with technology, or are they just?
Yeah, I think that,
knocking it out every
no, the answer is no. I think they're behind. So the people who are working now are behind, and we're having to bring them up to speed to a large extent. We're bringing in new technology and then helping them through.
I was gonna say, in their defense, they're so short-staffed. A lot of the master plumbers and master electricians cannot find apprentices. So if anybody in this audience knows anybody that's graduating high school that doesn't want to go to college, I highly recommend going to a trade because you will make a lot of money. You will. You're very smart. But they're so short-staffed, like they're working honestly more than most of us work. So it's like asking them to also then be on top of the newest technology is tough. So it's more like Bob said, like educating them on site, going through it, you being the expert, so you can educate them, get them on board. The good ones they'll work with you on it, like to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think that, for us, and I'm talking about the people who are in this room doing this kind of work, right? Being out, learning, growing, sitting here through, a panel discussion to pick up some things, that's really a differentiating factor. And I think that in today's market, being able to go out and tell that story to your customers, to prove the value you have against maybe another contractor who isn't doing this, and how important this is to be on the cutting edge. And I think that's something we should all pay attention to. And congratulations to all of you for being here, because it is a differentiating factor. How many contractors, designers, vendors are out there doing what we're doing right now, and look at how many are here, right? Or how many at these events. So I just want to, congratulate you all and use that in your sales pitch out there. Great. Gail?
So I have, maybe this is more of a comment than a question, but I wonder if we aren't going down the path we went with cars, where it used to be, took it in, your mechanic could change your spark plugs, whatever. Now you take it in, the blinker doesn't work, it's a $2,000 job, because it's all computerized and all the rest of that. So just kind of food for thought. I come against, with a designer who tried to talk me out of putting in, adjustable lights, because he said, what are you gonna do when it goes wrong? It's something to think about. But I'm also curious about how the technology that you use, all the digital stuff and all the CAD stuff, how does that hurt or help you when you come together with a team? So now you've hired a builder who's not on your team, and you have to work with them, and how do you share all that information?
Sure, no, that's a great question because, but fortunately it's an easy one to answer because the way that the technology works, so if we need to share with our builders, with our AV folks, it's become easier and easier. We have gotten to the point where, so we work on one BIM platform, and we can work with an interior designer on a different BIM platform. And our folks can just export out and they can import in. We couldn't do this 5 years ago. It's as simple as, it really is as simple as just having that one file in a Dropbox and it's sent over and that part of the team gets it. They can work on their aspect of the design, get it back to us. It's now coordinated and then with that coordinated, then get to our builders. We are still at an upward slope in having our builders want to use the model on the residential side. Commercial projects are doing integrated design and lead construction, and they are using the same model in real time. We haven't seen that just yet. We are trying to get our structural engineers to use our modeling so that they can actually see what happens with their steel being in our kitchen. We typically just figure it out for them. Get back to them and say, it's too tall, think of something else, before it gets to you. So, you know, there is that, there is a lot of ease. The other great piece with the technology is, and this has happened recently, where we have clients that are out of state, but they have homes in the Cape. And through as simple as our screen share and our model, they are seeing us and also seeing the model at the same time. So we are, as we walk through their cottage or their new home, they can experience that with us. We get real-time feedback of the, oh my God, that's great, that's always nice, or not sure about that, which is another answer for us to say, well, okay, let's consider this, and our architects are so fast that in 2 minutes, they have a different scheme. That window is over there, the refrigerator is back in the corner, or we've already prepared, we've already prepared for that, and they can now see it in real time and virtually walk through that again. It's great for the finished carpenters too, because if we get into something really quite intricate, that model or that printout in 3D, oh, the light bulb goes off and says, I get it. I can now build that. They're talented, they're skillful, they can do it, but they need the whole picture. And again, that's part of the fun for us because we've thought about it, we've spun around it, we've gone inside, outside, and now we want those trade partners to be able to do the same thing. Again, that's all on an iPad or a phone, not even a high-powered computer.
Right. Thank you very much. Listen, we could go on and on. This is such a big topic, but I think we are going to wrap it up for now. I presume you guys will be around for a little bit after we wrap up here. If people want to go up and ask a couple questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doug got some wine. Let us. Everybody stay till we get back to the bar.
So, wait, before all leave it up, I just wanted to point out that we are doing a raffle for anyone that is not an IFDA member for a full year membership for 2020. So if you are not currently an IFDA member, please see me. I will get you the thing that you can fill out and put into the bowl. Kohler is also graciously raffling off a special prize that I don't know what it is, but what? Two special prizes. And look, there's only like maybe 40 people here, so your odds of winning are excellent. But you have to enter in order to win.
I can tell what it is. I can't tell what
Kevin, where are we entering for the Kohler prizes? Great. So there's a box there. If you have not put your name in, you can only enter once. If you put it in twice, I will know, and you will be disqualified.
Thank you. And I do want to say thank you again to Kevin and the whole Inspired Back team. Thank you very much. Thank you to the whole IFDA board. You guys have no idea the effort that goes into putting something like this together.
All right, hold on one second. Just going to touch about the Kohler prizes. We do have a day toilet seat. A day toilet seat. And then we have a set of Turkish towels. So please enter the contest.
Yeah, for sure. You know Mike's gone, so now I'll be there now. Okay. My pleasure. Yeah, that's on mine. Man, thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I was
I'm excited. I enjoy this stuff. I mean, I'm also a master of, if I'm gonna be in this industry, I gotta be the big boss. That's the goal.
Oh, you want to take that?
No, if you want, if you want to grab some more. Sure.
Jack called me this morning. I don't know. Oh, we are. Yeah. No. We got that in. We got that out. Yeah, we sold out. Get a picture of that. We want to get and really just yeah, like we want to get the photos. Just events like this, the live well, this is talking about Kohler stock rotation stuff. We would really explain it because a lot of the features are heavy on that. We're just really trying to figure out why that is, how we get the right mix. Absolutely.
I remember that, and you were like,
I'm like trying to figure out where I want.
how to figure it out.
Brad said it was a good seminar.
I mean, I have
My mom does that too.
and then when they,
And that's a good bias. It's the whole thing, right?
and then I realized, oh, it has like 1,000 batteries in it.
Yeah. Even our switch, which is not or anything special, there was one that was out, and they were like, yeah, you can replace the whole panel for $300. We're like, we're fine. Like, we don't need to replace that much. But like, it's ridiculous. Like, really? Like, the fridge itself is we'll just buy a new fridge and whatever. It's totally true. It's all connected now, and that one thing is just, and it's connected to an entire circuit or whatever. It's going to be a whole new what is coming out? Obviously, you don't know about. I mean, we have a very rudimentary toilet, but now we need a wire behind a toilet, or someday, I guess. I don't know. I was going to get another glass of wine. I mean, it's just and then you sit down and the toilet pops up. I don't know. We all need an outlet behind you.
Well, they are automatic.
Yes, I've seen those. Yes. Well, I mean, if you walk into a bathroom,
Yes. It's actually in one of the fancy showrooms.
Finer baths have it.
Yeah, maybe it was there.
It's a heated toilet seat.
oh, see, that would be nice. I mean,
And they have like the Toto, like a really nice one, and it gets bathroom.
they are beautiful. Crap. Like,
It would be worth it for me. I take a bath a little bit.
you do? Do you have a standard bath, or is it like a shower? Wow.
Luckily, the apartment that I rent has jets in the bathtub.
God. Okay,
Is this
wow.
my one or your one? Don't
So
take your one.
I
No,
never
it's not
take
mine.
baths. Someone was like,
No, I didn't have one.
But if I had a $10 I'd be every day.
You guys are still being recorded.
Oh, great.
So just in case you said anything, don't worry, I might find out who you are. And